Captain John Miller of the USS Dauntless stood on the bridge of his ship staring at the strange message on the main screen. His heart beat fast in his chest. After all these years of searching the stars, humanity had finally made contact with aliens. "Play it again," he said to his communications officer, Kelly Brown. The message flickered and showed a tall, blue-skinned being with 4 eyes. The alien spoke in perfect English. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are the Galactic Council, an alliance of 217 intelligent species from across the stars. We have been watching your development with great interest. The time has come to invite humanity to join our peaceful community of worlds. We offer friendship, trade, and technologies beyond your imagination." Captain Miller ran his hand through his short brown hair. "How did they learn our language so well?" "They must have been monitoring our broadcast for years," said Commander Steve Davis, his second-in-command. "What do you think, Captain? Is this real?" "Send the message to Earth Command immediately," Miller ordered. "This is way above my pay grade." Within hours, the entire planet was buzzing with the news. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and they had been invited to join a community of advanced aliens. Most people celebrated in the streets. Scientists dreamed of new discoveries. Business leaders thought about alien markets for human goods, but not everyone was happy. In a secure underground room beneath the Pentagon, General Susan Clark frowned at the recording of the alien message. Around the table sat the Joint Chiefs of Staff and several civilian leaders. "I don't trust them," she said. "Why now? Why not contact us 50 years ago or wait another century? Maybe we just reached some threshold of technological development," suggested Defense Secretary Richard Evans. "Or maybe they want something specific from us," said General Clark. "Intelligence Officer Carter, what's your assessment?" Frank Carter stood up. He was a quiet man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "We've been analyzing the message nonstop. There are some concerning elements. The alien mentioned 217 species, but if you look at the star map they sent, it only accounts for about 40 settled star systems. Either they're being dishonest or most members aren't independent," finished General Clark. "Exactly," said Carter. "And there's more. We've run linguistic analysis on their message. They use peaceful words, but the structure contains subtle dominance patterns. They're not inviting us as equals." President Helen Warren rubbed her forehead. "But we can't just ignore this invitation. The public would never accept it." "I'm not suggesting we refuse," said General Clark. "I'm suggesting we accept, but carefully." For the next week, emergency meetings were held around the clock. Scientists studied the technical data the aliens had sent. Military leaders developed contingency plans. Diplomats prepared possible responses. Finally, a plan formed. Captain Miller was called to a top-secret meeting at the White House. When he arrived, he found himself facing the President, General Clark, and a small group of military and scientific advisors. "Captain Miller," said President Warren, "we're sending a delegation to meet the Galactic Council. You and the USS Dauntless have been chosen to transport them." Miller nodded. The Dauntless was Earth's newest and most advanced spacecraft, designed for long-term exploration missions. "It's an honor, Madam President." "There's more," said General Clark. "We have reason to be cautious about these aliens' intentions. The diplomatic mission will proceed, but with insurance." Officer Carter stepped forward with a digital tablet. "Our research team found something interesting. The Council's message included technical specifications for upgrades to your ship's engines, supposedly to help you reach their station. We've analyzed them. They're real improvements, but they also contain subtle ways to disable your ship remotely." Miller's face hardened. "They want us defenseless when we arrive." "Exactly," said General Clark, "which is why we're sending you with some surprises of your own." She activated a holographic display showing 3 M1 Abrams tanks. "Tanks?" Miller asked, confused. "In space? The Council has invited us to bring cultural artifacts representing humanity," explained Carter. "These will be our artifacts." Engineer Lisa Perez stepped forward. She was small, but had a fierce intelligence in her eyes. "We've modified these tanks with some of our own experimental tech. They'll work in low or zero gravity, and we've enhanced their armor with new composite materials. The Council won't be expecting anything like them. Your official mission is diplomatic, said President Warren. You'll transport our representatives, make peaceful contact, and begin negotiations to join the Galactic Council. But your unofficial mission is to assess their true intentions and protect humanity's interests. And if their intentions aren't good? Miller asked. General Clark's expression was grim. Then you show them that humans don't make good slaves. 2 months later, the USS Dauntless was ready. The alien technology had been carefully integrated into its systems, but with additional safeguards designed by Perez and her team. The ship now had twice its previous range and speed. The diplomatic team came aboard, led by Ambassador Patricia Wright, a veteran negotiator, and her deputy Alan Martinez. With them came scientists, cultural experts, and several security personnel who moved with the disciplined precision of Special Forces soldiers. The 3 M1 Abrams tanks were secured in a special cargo bay, disguised as cultural exhibits in the ship's manifest. On the day of departure, Captain Miller addressed his crew. Today we make history. We are the first humans to travel beyond our solar system, and the first to make official contact with an alien civilization. Our mission is peace and friendship. He paused, looking at each face on the bridge. But we go prepared for anything. We represent not just our countries or ourselves, but all of humanity. Whatever happens, we will make Earth proud. The Dauntless lifted off from lunar orbit, its new engines glowing with alien energy. As they accelerated past the outer planets, Miller looked at the small blue dot that was Earth growing smaller behind them. Begin final preparations, he ordered. Next stop, the Galactic Council. What nobody on the ship knew was that Officer Frank Carter had discovered one more thing before they left. A message fragment from another alien species, warning that the newest members of the Council rarely remained free for long. He had shared this only with General Clark, who had given Miller final secret orders. If necessary, protocol independence would be activated, and the tanks would be just the beginning. The journey to the Galactic Council space took 3 months. Captain John Miller spent most of that time studying the alien data they had been given. The Dauntless moved faster than any human ship before, thanks to the new technology. Stars blurred, past the viewports as they traveled deeper into the unknown. Status report, Miller called out one morning as he entered the bridge. Commander Steve Davis looked up from his console. All systems normal, Captain. We're on course to reach the Council. Station in 14 days. In the ship's main conference room, Ambassador Patricia Wright was conducting another diplomatic training session. Her deputy, Alan Martinez, stood beside a holographic display showing various alien species. Remember, Wright said to the gathered diplomats, we know almost nothing about these species' cultural norms. Watch for nonverbal cues. What might seem friendly to us could be threatening to them. Martinez pointed to one of the alien images. The Council data identifies this species as the Jatar. They appear to be the oldest members and likely hold the most influence. Down in the engineering section, Lisa Perez was working on one of the M1 Abrams tanks. She had removed several panels to access the inner systems. 3 soldiers in plain uniforms stood nearby watching her work. How's the gravity compensation coming along? Asked Sergeant Jack Owen, the tank commander. Perez wiped sweat from her forehead. Almost done. These babies will work in any gravity, from 0 to twice Earth normal. The tricky part was making sure they still look like regular tanks. Nothing regular about bringing tanks to a diplomatic meeting, Owen said with a grin. Perez's expression grew serious. Let's hope we don't need to use them. In his private quarters, Officer Frank Carter was reviewing data. He had spent weeks analyzing the Council's messages and technical information. Something didn't add up. The aliens claimed to represent over 200 species, but Carter could only find clear references to about 20 in the data they provided. There was a knock at his door. It was Captain Miller. Find anything new? Miller asked. Carter nodded. I think I understand their system better now. The Council isn't a democracy like they claim, it's more like a pyramid. The species at the top have been part of it for thousands of years. New members start at the bottom with very few rights. Miller frowned. So we'd be joining as bottom-tier members? Worse than that, Carter said. Look at these resource exchange protocols. New members are required to provide raw materials, labor, and technology. They receive protection and limited access to council technology in return. Sounds like a protection racket, not an alliance, Miller said. Exactly. And there's more. I found references to species that aren't listed as current members. They joined, then somehow disappeared from the records. The two men looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. What had happened to those missing species? On the 10th day of their final approach, the Dauntless detected another ship. It was the first alien vessel they had encountered on their journey. They're hailing us, Kelly Brown announced from the communication station. On screen, Miller ordered. The view screen showed a cockpit with two aliens. They had gray skin and large eyes. They were not a species included in the Council's information package. Greetings, Earth vessel, one alien said in broken English. We are traders from Nelock's system. You go to Council? Yes, Miller replied cautiously. We've been invited to join. The aliens looked at each other. Direct invitation for new species? Very unusual. Miller leaned forward. Why is that unusual? Most new ones must petition many cycles, must prove worth, must bring gifts to senior members. The alien seemed confused. You are special, maybe, or... It didn't finish the thought. Or what? Miller asked. Nothing. Good journey to you. The alien cut the transmission. More alien ships appeared as they got closer to Council space. Some ignored them. Others approached to scan the Dauntless or attempt communication. Most seemed surprised that humans had been invited directly to the Council. Miller called a meeting of the ship's leadership team. I think we need to be even more cautious than we planned. These other species' reactions suggest our invitation is not normal procedure. Ambassador Wright nodded. I agree. Perhaps we've been brought in for some special purpose. Or we're walking into a trap, said Officer Carter. 2 days before reaching the Council station, a sleek vessel approached. It was much larger than the Dauntless and moved with incredible speed and precision. It took position alongside the human ship. We're being scanned, reported the sensor officer. Very detailed scans. They're looking at everything, including our cargo areas. Miller tensed. Activate the shielding around the special cargo. Engineer Perez had installed special materials around the tank bay that would confuse most scanning technology. The tanks would appear as large metal objects, but their true nature would be hidden. The alien ship sent a message. A tall, elegant being appeared on screen. It had blue skin and 4 eyes, just like in the first contact message. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Emissary Zorthak of the Galactic Council. We will escort you to the Council station. Thank you, Emissary, Miller replied with a formal nod. We look forward to meeting the Council. After the transmission ended, Miller turned to his crew. Opinions? They timed that perfectly, said Commander Davis. They knew exactly when to intercept us. They've been tracking us the whole time, Carter added. Probably testing how well we handle their technology. The Council station came into view the next day. It was massive. A ring-shaped structure orbiting a small star. Hundreds of ships moved around it. The station itself was bigger than any city on Earth. My God, breathed Ambassador Wright. It's incredible. The Dauntless was directed to a docking area. As they approached, Miller received a private message from General Clark back on Earth. The quantum communication device allowed instant contact despite the vast distance. Captain Miller, our analysts have reviewed all your reports. We believe the situation is even more concerning than we initially thought. The Council appears to be an empire, not an alliance. New evidence suggests they specifically target developing worlds with unique resources or strategic positions. What are your orders, General? Miller asked. Proceed with the diplomatic mission, but be ready. If you confirm our suspicions, you are authorized to activate protocol independence. Miller's expression remained neutral, but his mind was racing. Protocol independence was their most extreme contingency plan. It meant revealing the tanks and taking a hard stance against any attempt to subjugate Earth. As the Dauntless docked at the station, Miller gathered his senior staff one last time. "We came here as diplomats first," he told them. "Let's hope that's all we need to be. But be ready for anything. The future of our entire species may depend on what happens in the next few days." The airlock doors opened. Beyond them waited representatives of the Galactic Council, ready to welcome humanity into their ranks one way or another. Captain John Miller led the human delegation through the massive airlock, connecting the USS Dauntless to the Galactic Council station. Ambassador Patricia Wright and her deputy Alan Martinez walked beside him. Behind them came Officer Frank Carter and 6 security personnel in formal uniforms. They had practiced this moment many times, but nothing could prepare them for the reality. The council station was breathtaking. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet above them. Strange plants grew in carefully tended gardens. Aliens of all shapes, sizes, and colors moved through the vast space. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or more. Some floated or slithered across the floor. Emissary Zorthak waited for them, standing tall with his blue skin gleaming under the artificial lights. 4 eyes blinked at different times as he studied the humans. "Welcome to the central hub of the Galactic Council," Zorthak said, spreading his 3-fingered hands. "You are the first humans to set foot here, a historic moment for your species." "Thank you for your welcome," Ambassador Wright replied with a practiced smile. "We are honored to represent Earth." Zorthak's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "Your ship is interesting. Our scans detected unusual energy signatures." Miller kept his face neutral. "We used the engine modifications you provided. Perhaps they interact with our systems in ways you didn't anticipate." "Perhaps," Zorthak said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Come, I will show you to your quarters. The formal introduction to the council is scheduled for tomorrow. You should rest and prepare." As they walked through the station, Miller noticed how other aliens reacted to Zorthak. Some bowed deeply, others moved quickly out of his way, eyes downcast. It wasn't respect, Miller realized. It was fear. Their quarters were luxurious by human standards, a large common area connected to private rooms for each member of the delegation. The windows looked out onto the vastness of space and the curve of the station. As soon as Zorthak left, Security Officer Doug Williams took out a small device and began scanning the rooms. 11 listening devices and 4 visual recorders, he announced after a few minutes. "They're watching everything we do and say." "As expected," Miller said. "Everyone stick to the cover stories we practiced. Remember, we're honored guests excited to join the council." Officer Carter set up a small device on the central table. "This will create background noise to mask our conversations in this room only. It won't block all surveillance, but it will make it harder for them to hear us clearly." Ambassador Wright looked worried. "Captain, I'm starting to think General Clark's concerns were justified. The way other species react to the council representatives, it's not how equals treat each other." "I agree," Miller said. "Carter, what have you learned?" Carter pulled out his data pad. "I've been monitoring communications since we arrived. Most of it is encrypted, but I've picked up some interesting patterns. There are at least 7 distinct hierarchical levels among the species here. The Jatar appear to be at the top, followed by about 5 other senior species. Everyone else seems to be organized by how long they've been council members." "And where would we fit in?" Martinez asked. "Bottom tier," Carter said grimly. "There's a reason they call new members developing species instead of partners." A chime sounded, announcing a visitor. Miller nodded to Williams, who disabled the noise generator before opening the door. A small alien with green skin and large, wet eyes stood nervously in the hallway. It wore simple clothing with no decorations. "Greeting, humans," it said in a whisper. "I am Vril of the Tellarite Confederation. May I enter?" Miller gestured for the alien to come in. Williams did a quick scan to make sure it carried no listening devices, then reactivated the noise generator. "Thank you for seeing me," Vril said, its voice still quiet even though they couldn't be overheard. I came to warn you. My people joined the council 50 of your years ago. We were like you, excited, hopeful. And now? Ambassador Wright asked. Now we are servants. We mine resources for the senior members. Our best scientists work in their laboratories. Our children are educated to be useful to the council, not to preserve our own culture. Vril's eyes blinked rapidly. We cannot leave. When we tried to reduce our contribution, they disabled our ships and threatened our homeworld. Miller exchanged glances with Carter. This confirmed their worst fears. Why are you telling us this? Miller asked. Won't you be punished? I'm already assigned to waste disposal. There is little more they can do to me, Vril said with a sound like a sad laugh. I tell you because you still have a chance. Your ship is still functional. You have not yet signed their agreements. What agreements? Ambassador Wright asked sharply. Tomorrow they will present you with the member species accord. It looks like a standard diplomatic treaty, but hidden in the legal language are terms that give them control over your planet's resources and military. Once signed, they consider it binding for at least 1,000 years. After Vril left, the human delegation gathered to discuss their options. We should leave immediately, Martinez suggested. Get back to Earth and warn everyone. They'd never let us reach the airlock, Williams pointed out. I've noticed security barriers that weren't there when we arrived. They can lock down this entire section. Besides, Miller added, running now would just delay the problem. If we leave, the council might decide Earth is too much trouble and move on to more direct methods. What do you mean? Ambassador Wright asked. Officer Carter answered grimly. Remember those species that disappeared from the records? I've been asking subtle questions. According to rumors, species that refuse council membership but have valuable resources often suffer natural disasters. Asteroids hitting major cities, sudden viral outbreaks, that sort of thing. Miller stood up and walked to the window. Beyond the station, he could see stars and distant ships. Somewhere out there was Earth, depending on them to make the right decision. We need to change the terms of engagement, Miller said finally. We came here thinking we'd be negotiating as equals. Clearly that's not their plan, so we need to show them that humans aren't like the other species they've encountered. How do we do that? Wright asked. Miller's expression was determined. Tomorrow, when they invite us to present our cultural artifacts to the council, we show them exactly what humanity brings to the table. Williams nodded in understanding. The tanks. Yes, Miller said. It's time to activate protocol independence. I'll inform General Clark and get final authorization. That night, while most of the delegation tried to sleep, engineer Lisa Perez and her team secretly prepared the M1 Abrams tanks on the Dauntless. They checked weapon systems, tested the modified movement systems, and loaded special ammunition, designed to work in various atmospheres and gravities. The next morning, Captain Miller dressed in his formal uniform. As he fastened the last button, he knew this day would either mark humanity's entrance into galactic society or the beginning of a conflict that would define Earth's future among the stars. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was enormous. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in curved rows that rose high above the central speaking floor. Captain John Miller stood with Ambassador Patricia Wright and the rest of the human delegation at the entrance, waiting to be announced. Remember the plan, Miller whispered. We follow protocol until the cultural presentation. Then we change the game. Ambassador Wright nodded, her face tight with tension. She had spent her career working toward peaceful agreements. Now she was part of what might become the most dramatic confrontation in human history. A deep tone sounded through the hall, and all conversations stopped. At the highest point of the chamber, 7 aliens of different species sat on elevated platforms. These were the senior council members, the rulers of this part of the galaxy. The central seat was occupied by a Jatar who looked older than Emissary Zorthak, with darker blue skin and eyes that seemed to see everything. The council recognizes the representatives of Earth, a developing world from the spiral arm of Sector 87, announced a tall, thin alien with a voice that echoed throughout the chamber. As they walked to the center of the floor, Miller noticed subtle movements among the security forces around the room. They were being watched very carefully. "Welcome, humans," said the central Jatar in a deep voice. "I am High Counselor Vexcal. We are pleased you have answered our invitation. It is always a joyous occasion when a new species joins our ancient alliance." Ambassador Wright stepped forward. "High Counselor, esteemed members of the Council, we thank you for your welcome. Earth is honored by your invitation and eager to learn more about the community of worlds you have built." Vexical's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Yes, your species has much to learn. But first, we understand you have brought cultural artifacts to share with us, as is our tradition for new members." Wright glanced at Miller, who gave a slight nod. "Yes, High Counselor," she said. "With your permission, Captain Miller will oversee the presentation of our artifacts." Miller stepped forward and tapped his communication device. "USS Dauntless, this is Captain Miller. Please deliver the cultural artifacts to the Great Hall." There was a moment of silence, then a loud rumbling sound came from the entrance to the hall. The massive doors slid open, and 3 M1 Abrams tanks rolled in, their engines growling. They moved in perfect formation, coming to a stop behind the human delegation. Gasps and shouts of alarm erupted throughout the hall. Security forces reached for weapons. The senior council members rose from their seats. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Vexical, his voice no longer calm. "You bring weapons to the council?" Miller stood tall, his voice amplified to reach every corner of the vast chamber. "These are indeed weapons, High Counselor. They are also cultural artifacts that represent an important part of human history and philosophy." He walked around the lead tank, patting its armored side. "This is an M1 Abrams main battle tank. For centuries, humans fought each other in terrible wars. We learned hard lessons about power, freedom, and the importance of strength when negotiating peace." The tank turrets rotated slowly, scanning the room. The security forces froze, unsure what to do. "These are primitive devices," sneered one of the other senior council members. "They cannot harm our advanced defenses." Engineer Lisa Perez stepped forward from where she had been standing with the tank crews. "Actually, that's not entirely accurate. We've made some modifications." She pressed a button on a small remote, and the lead tank's armor panels glowed with energy. "We reverse-engineered some of your technology. These tanks now have energy shielding, gravity compensation, and enhanced weapon systems. Would you like a demonstration?" "This is outrageous!" Vexcal shouted. "Guards, disarm these primitives!" But the guards hesitated as all 3 tank turrets swiveled toward them. Miller raised his hand. "Before anyone does something they'll regret, I think you should see what Officer Carter has discovered during our visit." Frank Carter stepped forward with a data device. "With your permission, I'll display this on your central system." Without waiting for permission, he connected his device to the Council's communication network. Immediately, screens throughout the hall lit up with images, documents, and recordings. "These are records of how the Council has treated new member species," Carter explained. "Resource extraction agreements that drain planets dry. Military restrictions that leave worlds defenseless. Species that were once proud and independent reduced to servants and laborers." The hall erupted in chaos. Many of the representatives from newer member species stood up, shouting questions and demands. The senior council members tried to shut down the screens, but Carter had built-in safeguards against that. "Enough," roared Vexical. "This presentation is over. Humans, you have violated our most sacred protocols. You will be escorted back to your ship and confined there until the council decides your punishment." "I don't think so," Miller said calmly. "You see, we came here prepared for this possibility. Right now, the USS Dauntless is fully operational, despite your attempts to disable it, and these tanks are just a small example of what humans can do when threatened." Ambassador Wright stepped forward again. "We didn't come here looking for conflict, High Counselor. We came hoping for true partnership, but we will not accept the terms you've imposed on other species." One of the representatives from a mid-tier species stood up. "The humans speak truth. The Aurelian worlds have given resources and labor for 3 centuries, yet we remain developing with no voice in council decisions." Another representative rose.
The Beltau Consortium has lost 2 colony worlds to administrative reassignment.
When we questioned resource quotas, more and more representatives began to stand shouting their grievances. What had been carefully hidden was now in the open. Miller watched as the perfect order of the council chamber descended into chaos. This was the moment that would determine everything. Vexacal raised his hands and a booming sound silenced the hall. "This is unprecedented. Humans, you have incited disorder in our sacred chambers. This cannot stand." Miller nodded to Sergeant Jack Owen, who opened the hatch of the lead tank and climbed out to stand on top of it. "Hi, Counselor," Miller said. "Earth proposes a different kind of relationship with the Galactic Council. One based on actual equality, mutual benefit, and respect for sovereignty." "And if we refuse?" asked Vexcal coldly. "Then we leave, taking our information with us," Miller replied. "And we share what we've learned with every species in the galaxy. I imagine many of your developing members might reconsider their position." The 7 senior council members huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. The entire hall watched in tense silence. The tanks remained in position, their presence an unmistakable symbol of humanity's refusal to be intimidated. Finally, Vexacal turned back to face the humans. His expression was unreadable, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "there is room for discussion about the nature of new member integration." Captain Miller allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't victory. Not yet, but it was a beginning. "We look forward to those discussions," he said, "as equals." 1 year had passed since the day humans brought tanks to the Galactic Council. Captain John Miller stood by the large window in the new Earth Embassy on the Council Station. The view had changed. Where once there had been only the Council's ships patrolling the area, now vessels of all shapes and sizes moved freely. "Quite a different place now, isn't it?" Ambassador Patricia Wright said as she joined him at the window. Miller nodded. Hard to believe how much has changed in just 1 year. After that fateful day in the council chamber, negotiations had been tense. The senior council members, led by Vexcal, had tried every trick to maintain their power. They threatened, they offered bribes, they attempted to turn species against each other. But the truth had been revealed and there was no going back. Earth had become the unofficial leader of what some called the Reform Movement. Dozens of newer council species had rallied around the humans, inspired by their stand against the old order. "The Tellarite delegation is ready for the ceremony," Wright said. "Vrill asked if you would join them. He says you're a hero to his people." Miller smiled slightly. "I'm no hero. I just showed up with tanks at the right moment." "Don't sell yourself." "Short, Captain," said Frank Carter as he entered the room carrying data tablets. "Those tanks may have gotten everyone's attention, but it was your willingness to listen to the other species that really changed things." In the months after the confrontation, Miller had spent countless hours meeting with representatives from other worlds, hearing their stories, understanding their grievances, and they had formed a coalition strong enough to force real change. The door opened again, and Engineer Lisa Perez walked in with Sergeant Jack Owen. "The miniature tank replicas are ready," Perez announced with a grin. 28 of them, 1 for each species in the Reform Alliance. Those small models of the M1 Abrams had become unexpected symbols throughout the council space. What began as a joke, giving tiny tank models as gifts to allied species, had evolved into a powerful statement. To own or display one meant you stood for fair treatment and opposed the old council's methods. "Time to head to the ceremony," Wright reminded them. "We shouldn't keep the interim council waiting." They walked through the station's corridors, now much changed from a year ago. Gone were the obvious security checkpoints and monitoring devices. Species of all kinds mingled freely, without the fear and deference that had once been common. The Great Hall had been remodeled. Instead of rising tiers with the senior council high above everyone else, the chamber now featured a circular arrangement where all representatives sat at the same level. As the humans entered, they were greeted warmly by many delegates. Vrill of the Tellarites hurried over. wearing the formal robes of a full council representative instead of the plain clothes of a servant. "Captain Miller, we have wonderful news," Vril said excitedly. "The mining quotas have been officially canceled. Our people can finally rebuild our own world instead of stripping it for resources." Similar stories came from other species. The Aurelians had regained control of their colony worlds. The Beltau were developing their own spacefaring technology, instead of being restricted to council-approved designs. Not everyone was happy with the changes. The Jatar and other former senior council species had lost significant power and privilege. Some had threatened to leave the council entirely, but the reformed alliance was strong enough now that such threats carried little weight. The ceremony began with the formal signing of the new council charter. Each species, regardless of how long they had been members, would have an equal vote in council matters. Resource sharing would be truly mutual, with fair compensation. Military restrictions were lifted, though all members agreed to defend each other if attacked. When it was Earth's turn to sign, Ambassador Wright stepped forward with Captain Miller at her side. The entire hall fell silent. "1 year ago, we came here as newcomers, bringing our strange earthways and our tanks," Wright said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "Today we sign this charter not as conquerors or revolutionaries, but as partners in a truly united galaxy." She signed the document and the hall erupted in applause. After the ceremony, a reception was held in the station's grand garden. Captain Miller found himself approached by High Counselor Vexcal, now simply Representative Vexcal of the Jatar. "Captain Miller," Vexcal said stiffly, "your species continues to surprise us." Miller raised an eyebrow. "In what way?" "You had the power to take control, to do to us what we had done to others. Many expected you to use your position to become the new rulers." Vexcal's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Instead, you pushed for true equality, even when it would have been easier to seize power." "That's not the human way," Miller replied. "At least, not the best of the human way. We've had enough of empires and conquests in our history to know they don't last." Vexcal was silent for a moment. "Perhaps we can learn from each other after all." He gave a formal bow and moved away. As the reception continued, General Susan Clark arrived from Earth. She had traveled on the new human vessel, USS Unity, built with a combination of Earth technology and Council knowledge. "Quite a different scene from what we expected, Captain," Clark said as she surveyed the gathering. "When we sent you with those tanks, I thought we were preparing for conflict, not transformation." Miller smiled. "Sometimes showing strength isn't about starting a fight. It's about making sure the other side knows that fighting isn't their best option." Later that evening, Miller stood on a viewing platform with his crew. Below them, in a special display area, sat one of the original M1 Abrams tanks that had caused such an uproar a year before. It had been installed as a permanent exhibit with a plaque describing the day of change when humans arrived at the council. Commander Steve Davis laughed. "Who would have thought that old Earth tanks would become symbols of galactic freedom? They represent more than just weapons," Miller replied. "They represent humanity's approach to the universe. We come in peace, but we come prepared. We offer friendship, but demand respect." As they looked out at the stars, Miller thought about Earth, now one voice among many in the council, but a respected and influential one. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by conquest or submission, but by standing firm on principles of fairness and mutual respect. And it had all started with 3 tanks rolling into the council chamber, proving that sometimes the most effective diplomacy comes with tracks and turrets.